In this episode, we're talking about how to become multimillionaires by using the right investment strategies, and I hope you enjoy. What's up, everyone? So today we're talking about investing. We are demystifying the topic of investing, making it simple so everyone can invest for their future and turn $25,000 into $1 million. Granted, when it comes to investing, we need time, so that 25 to $1 million may take 40 years, and by the time you're ready to retire, you can have a large sum of money. But investing can get overly complicated. If you talk to somebody about this stuff, there's many things you can do when you're investing. In this podcast, I'm going to break it down simply for us, give a strategy that I use that will help me retire a millionaire. And it just doesn't need to be that complicated. Also, I talk about what I'm going to say here in my book, The Hidden Doors to Success, in chapter 11. So get a copy of the book and go to chapter 11, or just read the whole damn book. It talks about a lot of good things. But here we got investing. And I also got the new banner behind me. Check out the new banner behind me. Let's start with some background here. First of all, you don't want to retire with no money in your account. It is becoming a very expensive world to live in, and you need to pay for things like healthcare when you're older, especially as you get older. There's going to be more and more healthcare bills you need to pay, and just generally living costs. And if you want to enjoy yourself a little bit, it's nice to have a buffer. So I take investing for my future very seriously. And I'm going to show you the path that I use. So when I retire, I have multiple millions of dollars in my account. Two is that I don't use a financial planner. I don't think it's necessary for personal reasons. I don't think it's necessary. Maybe when you got a business and you have a lot of things going and you're busy and you don't have time to think about all of the nuances with your business and how that might affect the taxes and all that stuff. I get that you probably could use someone on hand who knows finance a little more. But for our personal reasons, I don't see a need for a financial planner. I see financial planners as two things. One, you have to pay them, and all those fees that you go to them could go to your own account that could grow over time. Or two, I see financial planners as not objective. I couldn't 100% know if they're recommending something because they truly think that's the best route for me, or they think, or it's what they're selling me on gives them the best commission. I wouldn't really know that unless you press them on that. My advice is listen to what I say here, then read my book, and then there's a couple books that I recommend. I think there's 4 altogether that I recommend to read to understand finance a little more. Do all that stuff, read up on it yourself. Maybe it takes a couple months to read those 4 books and the 4 books I recommend and my book. Maybe it takes a couple months, but the payoff is going to be huge. If you have no idea what you're doing when it comes to investing and you read those books, and now you do, the payoff we can talk about is in a dollar amount, potentially millions of dollars. If you have no idea how to invest and now you put your money in, you get tax benefits and you know what you're doing. You don't have to pay a financial planner. And now you start to invest, hoping for a better future with a lot more wealth, then you're going to want to just take those 2 months. Take the 2 months or take however long it takes you to read those things. It will be worth it. It's short-term pain for the long-term gain, and you will feel the benefit of it. And if you ever do think you need to go to a financial planner, do it after you're educated on this topic. Don't do it before. Otherwise, it's too easy to get swindled. So you don't want to get swindled. Read up on all this stuff. And then if at the very end you're like, you know what, I still want to go to a financial planner. Maybe someone who's really wealthy recommends it because there's some tax loopholes or something that's really esoteric that you need to have someone really explain to you that you can't find in a book. But I would say you can find it in a book by reading through all this stuff. But if there's something, then go to a financial planner being educated so you can't be swindled. And as soon as you find out you're being swindled, you can have that conversation, and then you can decide yourself that you don't need a financial planner anymore. But first, get educated on it. That's the first step. Okay, so we're learning here how to become multimillionaires by the time we retire. Let's break down. I'm going to break down a handful of things. First, we're going to talk investments versus investment vehicles. Then, what are we talking about? Then I'll talk about what a plan could look like, as far as like how do you prioritize your investments and investment vehicles, depending on how much you're looking to invest. And I give an investment example. If let's say you have $30,000 you want to invest every year, here's how I would do it. Here's how I do it, actually. Then I talk about where your investments should go, depending on which vehicle you go in, and we'll explain that in a little bit because you have investments, investment vehicles. Investments go in the vehicles. How much of a percentage you should put in your stocks and bonds. Okay. And the fact that we need to think long term when it comes to investing, not just very short term. So those are the key sub topics. Let's call them chapters or sections here that we're going to be going over. First is investments and investment vehicles. So investments are those things that actually have value, where the vehicles don't have value per se, but they're the things that your investments go in. And my metaphor here is it's like a car, it's like a vehicle and a passenger. The vehicle gets you from point A to point B, but the passengers are the ones that actually have value in and of themselves. Just like investments are the passengers and investment vehicles are the vehicles. And certain investment vehicles have their own benefits, tax benefits, and the investments themselves have different pros and cons to them. And we're going to talk about what those are and how to use them when we're thinking about navigating now. Navigating the investment world for ourselves. So first we have investments. So let's first break down investments. You can get probably over complex here. I'm talking about stocks and bonds and index funds, but index funds with stocks and bonds. It's not going to go more complicated than that. We're not going to talk about gold, and we're not going to talk about derivatives, and we're not going to be talking about real estate, even though real estate, it's a good investment. I'm not saying it's not a good investment, and I'm not saying it's not a good investment for retirement. It's just a different type of conversation. We might have that later down the road. I don't have any real estate investments at the moment, and I would feel like a fraud if I talked about that, so I'm not going to talk about it. But if you talk to some entrepreneurs, they love real estate investments, and I get it. There's a ton of tax benefits. There's That will be a different topic. But for now, we're talking about all the things that we can just plug into a little simple computer, into Vanguard, plug in our investments, let them grow over time, and almost do zero work. And then we'll talk about maybe real estate another time. But for right now, we're not talking about gold or real estate or derivatives or any of the other shit out there. We're talking about stocks and bonds and index funds. Those are going to be our investments. Stocks, for those listening who maybe are newer to this, stocks are a piece of ownership of a company, a public company. So I can buy 100 stocks or 100 shares of Apple, and I am a part owner, a very small part owner, but still technically a part owner. And the value of Apple as it goes up and down, those shares will also go up and down. So if Apple continues rising in its value, then if I own 100 shares and in 10 years those shares are worth more money and I sell them, I'll make a profit. And that's how you make money with stocks. The value of that stock goes up. With bonds, you're lending a company or government, you're actually lending them money, and they pay you back with interest, and they pay you back your principal. So, for example, if you had a $100 bond at a 4% interest rate, that means you give a company or a government $100 for 1 year. Let's say it expires in 1 year, or let's say it matures in 1 year at a 4% interest rate. That means at the end of 1 year, you'll have $104. So you'll make $104. So it's a debt. Bond is a debt, and asset is ownership. And then index funds, you can either pick stocks and bonds yourself, like each individual one. I want a piece of Apple. I want a piece of Google. I want a piece of this. I want a piece of that. Or you can throw it all in a large index fund where you get the benefit of going with the market average, but also diversifying yourself and not having to feel like you need to pick winners. And so index funds are really just a large swath of stocks and bonds. I like to pick the index funds that encompass almost all of them. They're very safe, and I work with the market average. When I say work with the market average, my my investment returns are in line with market average. And that's honestly consistently all I need. And that's what we're going to be talking about here as far as investments. Now, a couple things just to note because it's good to know. Stocks are inflation protection, and bonds are deflation protection. I'll tell you why. So with stocks, you own it. It's an asset. Someone has to pay you to buy them. And think about it like this. So when inflation happens, it takes your dollar doesn't go as far. It takes more to pay for an asset. So in my book, I talk about a simple little Apple example. If it took $1 to buy 3 apples, and now it takes $3 to buy 3 apples, the person who owns the apples might be pretty happy because now they're getting more money. Just like with the stocks, your stocks in inflation periods, you'll make more money because people have to pay more for that stock. Now, that's why when you have higher rates of inflation, we're seeing that in COVID times right now. You'll see that people who own assets actually do pretty well, because people have to pay more now for that asset. And most times, inflation isn't so balanced, meaning, you would assume with inflation periods that your dollar is not worth your dollar isn't worth what it used to be anymore, and you feel that across the board. So even if you own an asset here, you still have to pay more somewhere else, and it balances out. It depends on what it is, I would say, and we don't have to get into all of that because I would say it's very nuanced. But basically, your assets are inflation protected. People will have to pay more to get that asset. And with bonds, it's deflation protected. So now it's the exact opposite. Let's say you still have that $1 paying for one apple. With deflation, your dollars were actually worth more than it used to be yesterday. So, or in the history. So, if you owned now, let's say you have an Apple store and you got an apple, and now it's not $1 to buy one apple anymore. Now you can get two apples for that same dollar. In that scenario, your Apple owner is probably not that happy because he's not getting the same amount of money for that apple. He's getting now less money. And so not good for the Apple owner, good for the person who has the money. But the reason why you're deflation protected with bonds is because with bonds, you're getting interest payments consistently over time. The payments don't go up or down. Unless the company goes bankrupt or the government goes bankrupt, you're getting consistent interest payments every, I don't know, depends on the bond, but it could be quarterly, monthly, or yearly. And so imagine now you get the same consistent cash every month, and now deflation period happens and you're getting the same cash, but you can buy more with that cash because now your dollar's worth more. So now you can buy more apples. The Apple guy is not going to be very happy, but you will be because you'll have getting consistent cash. So deflation periods, yeah, I think they're more rare. And what governments like to see is more inflation periods. You'll see that inflation is more common year over year. Small percentage of inflation happens, maybe 2 to 3%, but it's still consistently happening for the most part. And so not that will necessarily change so much of how we're going to think about investing here, but it's a good thing just to understand with the economy. Okay, so now we got vehicles. This is where we're going to put our investments, and different vehicles have different advantages as far as taxes for the most part. It's like a big tax game here. What vehicle can you use to pay the least amount of taxes? And there's pros and cons, right? One, you have to wait for it until you retire. One, you don't. But if you don't wait, you're not getting tax incentives. One, you can get tax incentives, a lot of tax incentives, but you got to use it for college expenses. Let's break it down for what at least I use and what I think is the most common types of investments and things that you can use. You don't have to go. These are the most common vehicles, okay? So, and the ones that I use. So there's tax incentive vehicles and there's non-tax incentive vehicles. First, let's talk tax incentive. Tax incentive, there are three that I want to talk about. So one is a standard 401k with a company. So a 401k employer-sponsored vehicle. Let me get my green tea real quick. Okay. Employer-sponsored 401ks. So in here, these 401ks, you put your pre-taxed dollars into it, and your company or organization will usually match up to a certain percent. So some might match 3% or 5%. That just means like if you put in 3% of your salary, they'll match up that 3%. So it's free money. basically. They're putting their contribution in, and usually there's a like what do they call it? I can't think of the name right now, but there's a vesting period. So there's a vesting period. You need to be at the company usually 2 to 3 years and to be 100% vested into their contribution. So it's free money, but only if you stay at the company long enough. So, I mean, you should stay at companies for longer than a year. At least you should plan to. But just another reason why you should probably be more steady with your jobs and stay at least 3 years so you can get this free money. So it's pre-tax dollars. You put in now before you don't get taxed now, and then it grows along with company contributions and grows. And then at retirement age, I think it's 60 and a half now. At retirement age, you can take the money out. Now with this type of stuff, let's just break down pre and post tax. Pre-tax means, regardless, you got to pay $100, and let's say you're at the 30% tax bracket. When you pay taxes, you have to pay $30, and then 70 of that is post-tax. That's the actual cash that you can walk around and pay for things, because the other you have to pay taxes. So when I say pre-tax is you'll put $100 in. When I say post-tax, you would have to put you would put the 70 in. Different vehicles have pre and post. So depending on that, and there's no major benefit of either or. There are some benefits, but each one has its own benefits. So 401k employer sponsored is a pre-tax. Company matches. You wait a long time, let the money grow, and then boom, as you retire, you can extract money. With a 401k, you have a certain window of time that you have to extract money when you retire, or you will get penalized. And that's a con right there. You have to extract certain amounts of money, and some people want to avoid that because if their income is already high when they're older, which could happen, if your income's already high, and now you have to extract money from another place, that's going to raise your income up, and you're going to have to pay more taxes on that year. So that's not a great benefit of a 401k. The benefit is you get company sponsored contributions, free money, and your money grows tax free until you have to retire. And this is the perfect in everything we're going to be talking about with investing. We're talking about compound interest, meaning every year you're going to get earnings on your investments because they're going to receive earnings. Usually stocks will get about 10% per year. Now, if you look at 1 year period, that's not going to happen in each case. I'm saying when you look over 20, 30, 40 year period, on average, it'll be 10% per year. So let's just assume for stocks, you're getting 10% returnings every year. Compound interest basically says that the interest and the earnings that you get on the previous year are now part of your normal investment, and now that's earning interest. So it's like interest on interest on interest and on interest, and it's like a logarithmic scale where if you ever see an investment curve where it's like whoop. So like that's compound growth. Is your interest and interest on interest are making so much interest that eventually it's just like we're talking about exponential growth when it comes to investments. Which is why when I say you put $25,000 into an account now, in 40 years, it'll be $1 million. The goal is you put more than $25,000 and you get multiple millions of dollars, and you have periods of waiting time until you retire. So now I just did employer sponsored 401k. Now let's go a Roth IRA. So Roth IRA is not pre-tax, it's post-tax. So instead of putting $100 in, you're putting in 70 because you got the 30%, assuming we're saying you have a 30% tax bracket. It's post-tax. The major benefit here, which is this is a beautiful thing, and people who can take advantage of it, you better. The beautiful thing is that you're over time, just like a 401k, you're going to have compound interest over time. That's where you honestly get the most growth. You get a lot of growth from that compound interest. And so when you do that, those aren't, since you've already paid taxes when you put the money in. So remember the $70, when we put the money in for the Roth IRA with post-tax dollars, you don't get taxed anymore. So at 60 and a half, when you go to retire and you take money out, you pay no taxes. Whereas a 401k, you didn't pay taxes when you put the money in, but you pay taxes when you take the money out. It's a major benefit of Roth because now you're not paying any money on the earnings that you've earned for over 40 years, which is going to be the bulk of how you made your money. It is one of the major benefits of a Roth IRA. The other benefit is that there's no window of time that you need to take money out of your Roth IRA when you retire. Like a 401k has that rule. And so you won't get penalized if you keep your money in there. The benefit there is if your income is already high enough when you're older, you're not going to want to keep extracting money from your IRA account, your Roth IRA account, because now your income's going to go higher and higher and higher, and you're going to have to pay more taxes. So Roth IRA is beautiful. Put post-tax dollars in. You let that earnings grow exponentially. You don't have to take any money out when you get older, but if you do, you can, and you won't be taxed on it. So you'll see when I talk about this, but if you're eligible for a Roth IRA, you put the damn money in a Roth IRA. It is a beautiful account. Next is a 529 account. I pick a 529 account because I do this for my daughter. It is a vehicle for saving money for college. It's an investment vehicle for college. And the benefits are I put money in for my daughter, Margot Banks. I put money in and I get tax deductions on up to $10,000 in New York. I believe there's the rule. Every state has different rules on this, by the way, so this might not be your particular rule, but for what I have is I get up to $10,000. I get tax deductible on what I put into the account. And then as the money grows and grows for the next 18 years while she's growing up, when I extract that money ready for college-related expenses, I won't pay taxes on it specific to college-related expenses. So it's like a double whammy. One is I get tax deductions on what I put in, and two is when I take the money out ready and we're ready to pay for college expenses. I don't pay money out. I don't pay taxes on that. So 529 accounts are great for when you are saving up for your kids' college. And a lot of tax benefits with that. So those are the three. If you log in and look at all the accounts in like the IRS has all of the investment accounts. It gets a little bit complicated. Because different businesses can use different types of basically 401ks to a certain extent. But it all comes down to this. Those three, I think, are the most vital. There'll always be different types of 401ks or different types of employer-sponsored accounts, but it's all going to be somewhat similar to what I'm talking about here. Okay, so that is tax advantaged. Non-tax advantage are your regular Vanguard account. So I have a regular Vanguard account. I do my investments, but I just don't have any tax incentives. So I deprioritize this vehicle for the very end. I prioritize all the vehicles that I can when I get my beautiful benefits, and then I waterfall it down. So prioritize until I max them out, and then and then I use my standard account where I know I don't get all the tax benefits. And then a cash insured bank. So we all probably have this, a Citibank, a Chase, whatever bank you use. Most banks are FDIC insured, just insured by the federal government. I forget what FDIC means, but insured by the federal government up to $250,000. So it's a safe place to put your money, up to $250,000. After that, you might want to look at other places, but for up to $250,000, it's safe. I recommend using that for like fast cash when you need like expenses that are expected on the road. Oh, sorry. This is what happens when you do podcasting at 5 a.m. Okay. Now the plan. So I just talked about the vehicles and the investments. Now let's talk about what you would do as a plan. As for a plan, I would max out the 401k matching. So your company, employer if you work for a company and they have an employer sponsored 401k, they match up to 3%. I don't care where the hell you are in life, put up to 3% in. It's free money. It's the first thing I would do automatically. Put up to what the company is going to match so you can take advantage of 100% of the opportunity that your company or organization is going to match up to. Next is max out a Roth IRA. So I love Roth IRAs. It's just so many damn good benefits with this. And the caveat here is that with the Roth IRA, you have there's certain income limits. High income earners can't use a Roth IRA. There are too many damn benefits with a Roth IRA that the government put limits on it. And so if you can, and if you are eligible for a Roth IRA, put money in a Roth IRA. If you can't, and max it out. If you can't, then put it into a traditional IRA. Okay? A traditional IRA is very similar to a 401k in the sense that it's pre-taxed dollars. If you put money in here and you're eligible for it, it's tax deductible. So if you put $1,000 into it, you get $1,000 deducted from from your taxable income when it's time to pay taxes. So it's in a sense like pre-tax dollars. And then it works very similar with a 401k. It grows, and then you got to take money out when you retire. So the reason I say that is, right, Roth I think is much better. You have to pay no taxes when you retire. If you're not eligible for a Roth because of income limits, you then do a traditional IRA. And then if you can't do a traditional IRA because there are some now eligibility requirements for a traditional IRA. It's like the qualifications depend on if you're married and if you're not married and if you already have a 401k plan. So check out if you're on the IRS government. Check out if you are eligible for a traditional IRA. Well, actually, let me clarify that. You are eligible for a traditional IRA, but there are certain requirements in order to get tax deductions. So it depends on, I think, your salary level, and if you already have a 401k plan, you might not get the tax deductions that I just talked about. If you don't get tax deductions, then don't put money in a traditional IRA. Then go back to your 401k. Okay, so let me break those steps down very clearly. max out your 401k employer-sponsored plan up to their matching. So if they match 3%, put 3% in. That's step one. Step two is figure out what you got to do next. Is if you're eligible for a Roth, max out the Roth. If you're not eligible for a Roth because of income limits, put your money in a traditional IRA. If you can't put it in a traditional IRA because you're not if you can't get tax deductions in a traditional IRA, then you say, okay, fine. Then I'll go back to my 401k and max it out. So in the first step, remember, we only put up to the matching plan, but you can put more into your 401k. You can, for this year, 2021, you can put up to $19,600. Okay. So step one, max out matching. Step two, IRA, yes or no? Traditional IRA, yes or no? No? Okay. And then you go back to your 401k if not. And to clarify, a traditional IRA, I say it's similar to 401k, but the benefit of doing a traditional IRA over a 401k is that usually the expenses are lower than your 401k, a tiny bit lower, but they're still lower. And you have more options of what you want to invest in. 401k sponsored plans usually have somewhat limits on what you can invest in. Whereas your own traditional IRA, so traditional investment retirement account in your like Vanguard, you make one very easily in your Vanguard. There aren't any limits. You can invest in whatever the hell you want. And so it gives you more flexibility. So, and then after all of that, I put money into my 529 account so I can invest for baby Margot when she goes to college. So I want to make sure that makes sense for prioritization of my tax advantage vehicles. Step one, 401k, max out matching plan. Boom. Two, am I eligible for a Roth? If I have too high of an income, maybe not. Okay. Then since my traditional IRA has more flexibility than 401k, if I'm eligible for that, I'll go for that. If I don't get tax deductions, though, it's not worth putting money into a traditional IRA if I'm not going to get the tax deductions. So let me first max out the 401k because I do get the tax. I do pay pre-tax, so there's tax advantages. You'll pay it later, but right now your money's going to grow tax free, and that's good, so it can grow. So I would max out the 401k. Then I go to my 529 account and I put money in the 529 account. And so that's my priority of tax advantage vehicles. Anything else here? Anything else? Okay. That's tax advantage vehicles. Now, your non-tax advantage vehicles, here's how I would use them. My standard brokerage account would be, like I said, last on the priority list. First, do the steps I said. And then if you have money left over at the end, then put money into your standard brokerage account. You're not going to get tax benefits, but it's still going to grow. Your money's still going to grow. You're just going to pay taxes on them. You won't get all the great benefits you do with your tax advantage vehicles. And then my cash bank insured, where I put all the cash. You are going to want to put this where you need fast cash that's secure. So for me, I like to aim for 6 months of expenses that I put in the bank. And this way, this way, if I need fast cash, I could just pull it out of the bank. Really, the benefit is that if you have enough buffer in your bank that you can pull money out of your bank, you definitely need to do that. One is expenses will come up. Your roof will leak, something happen, you need a new tooth, I don't know, whatever that is. You'll always need a little bit of cash on hand. You definitely do not want to take cash from your investment vehicles, though. One, because if they're in tax advantage vehicles, there might be a penalty for taking money out before retirement. And the more money you take out of your vehicles, the more you're reducing the ability for your money to grow. So remember, we're talking about compound growth. You need to keep your money in so it can grow. The interest can grow and interest can grow and interest can grow and interest. If you keep taking money away, though, it's harder for that compound interest to take effect. So keep 6 months expenses in your cash, in your cash insured bank, and use that first for any money you need to take out. You don't want to be in a position where you need to take money out of your investment vehicles. So that is how I do the plan for my tax and non-tax advantage accounts. I think now let's do an example. So we got a little example here for someone who wants to save $30,000 in 1 year. So let's assume this person works in a company with a matching plan, and let's assume they don't have a kid. So they want to save $30,000. They work at a company with a 401k matching plan that matches up to 3%. Like I said, the first step, take advantage of that 3%. So this person puts, and let's say they're making $60,000 a year. That means they're saving 50% of their income. That's very good. If you can do that, that's great. That is a little aggressive. So they put in 3% for their 401k matching plan because they know their company is going to match 3% too. Free money. So that means he puts in 1.8 and that company puts in 1.8 for the year. That means he got $3,600 just from the 401k. But his goal is $30,000. So that's first priority. He maxed out that opportunity. Next opportunity is he can max out a Roth. So, and he's eligible based on his income. So he's going to max out a Roth. So he puts money in a Roth. There's a $6,000 limit in 2021. And that brings the investment up to $9,600. That accounts for the $3,600, and now the $6,000 that was just invested. Okay, and keep in mind here, I didn't mention this, but a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA they're just both pre and tax in your individual retirement accounts. So IRA, individual retirement accounts, one's traditional, one's Roth. They both have a total of $6,000 limit. So you can put $3,000 in one and $3,000 in one, and you hit the limit. Or you can put $6,000 in one and $0 in one. You still hit the limit. You can't put over $6,000 when you add them both up. So if you've maxed out your Roth in this situation, you can't now put money into a traditional IRA. And based on my priority, you wouldn't anyway. You'd have a choice. My priority is Roth. If you can't do Roth, traditional. If you can't do traditional, put it back into your 401k. So this person maxed out 401k. Opportunity, the matching limit, they next match out their Roth. They're up to $9,600. They need to get to $30,000. Now they go back to their 401k account because they've already maxed out Roth. Their next priority is to max out their 401k account. And you can go up to $19,600 is what you can max out your 401k. He's already put $3,600 in. So there's $17,800 remaining that is put in, and that brings the total investment to $27,400. But the goal is $30,000. So now, remember, this example, they don't have a kid. In previous example, I would put money into a 529 account, but there's no kid in this scenario, so this person puts the remaining in their standard brokerage account. There's $2,600 remaining. They put that $2,600 in their standard brokerage account, and now they're up to $30,000 for the year, and that is how they prioritize their investment strategy. If they had a kid, maybe they would not use their standard brokerage account, and they just put that into their 529. So that is how a simple example of how I would prioritize where I'm putting my money. Basically, what you're doing is I want the best advantages, and I'm putting that first. I'm maximizing those opportunities first. I'm maximizing the free money from the matching plan. I'm maxing the opportunity to get tax incentivized dollars to grow for me. And then after all that, I'll put it into my brokerage account. So now what you need to understand is, where does your investments go into which vehicles? Remember, I said one of the topics was investments go into which vehicles. This means I talked about stocks and bonds, but I also mentioned that you're going to have all these different investment vehicles. Basically, what it comes down to is you're going to have two index funds, a stock index fund and a bond index fund. You're going to use index funds because, one, you're going to grow with the market average. Two, it's going to be simpler for you. Here's the thing. People may say, you might read an article and all this stuff, and you might hear that you don't have to use stock, you don't have to use index funds. You can do it all yourself and grow above the market average. I call bullshit on that. I don't know who can consistently grow above the market average for 30 or 40 years. Even if you can, here's the thing, even if you can do that, how much higher can you really go above the market average? And then you have to see, okay, so this person said that I could, let's say the market average is like here, and let's say which is very hard to do consistently for 40 years, pick winners. I just don't see that happening. But let's say someone says for consistently 40 years, you can do that, and this is the market average, and you can get like here. Okay, so a tiny, tiny bit above market average. Then you have to weigh yourself the time. How much time will it take for me to actually get that very tiny incremental gain compared to what I could just do with a stock index? Now, so you're out doing your own thing. You have a career and you have hobbies and you have loved ones you want to spend time with. If you have to look at the opportunity cost, if so much of your time is just over like many, many hours a week or a month just to get a tiny, 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 tiny incremental gain, you have to weigh the time value there. Is all that time taken away from actually maybe other income earning activities? Like if you have a career that's a great career, or you have a company that's a great company, and you can't spend the time making those things better because you're spending so much of your time on this focused little incremental gain, then it's not worth it. Now, if someone can tell you, no, you don't have to worry about that, you can just work with a financial planner, they'll tell you how to do it and you'll get that incremental gain. Again, I call bullcrap. Most funds are not working above market average. And even if they are, you're paying a higher fee for them to manage it, so it almost balances out anyway. I personally wouldn't do it. You're putting way too much time into things, and you need to go, one, make sure that you're studying and working your butt off so your career or company can do well. And you need that time. That limited time is valuable, and you need to put it towards things that will benefit you there. And then on the flip side, even, the gains that you get, if you have to pay higher fees or you have to put way much more time into it, you have to look at that, because I don't think it's worth it. So you'll hear really good arguments for not doing index funds, but I use 2 index funds and I call it a day. So these are my investments: 2 index funds, stock index fund and a bond index fund. My stock index fund, I do all the stuff through Vanguard. So the one I use for Vanguard is VTSAX. VTSAX. I think sometimes they call it Admiral shares. It's really just all the stocks combined really into one index fund. So I follow the market average. I get the benefits when new companies go on IPO and they take off. They're in my investment vehicle. When some companies die off, that happens too. So I get the whole average. I get the great ones, the good ones, and I get the middle ones, and I work with the average. I spend no time looking at this at all. I just dump money in and boom, go do my thing. Work on my podcast, work on a book, work on building my career, and let my goddamn money grow. The next one is the bond index. The bond index is VBTLX. This is a combination of government and company bonds. It's a safe company investments. And so those are the only two that I work with. And let me tell you where I put them. So with a stock index fund, that goes everywhere except my cash insured bank. You can't put that in there, but everywhere else, my 401k, my Roth IRA, my standard brokerage account, it all works. You could put it anywhere. Now, the bond index fund, I don't put in my cash insured bank, obviously, but I don't put that in my standard brokerage account. The reason is my standard brokerage account is not tax incentivized, meaning every year that I realize earnings, I have to pay taxes on those earnings in a standard brokerage account. Whereas like a 401k, it doesn't matter. It grows tax-free for many years. And then at the end, I'll pay taxes. But with a standard brokerage account, every year that I realize earnings, I have to pay taxes. And with bonds earn money every month or quarter. And so if I have a bond index fund in my standard brokerage account, I'm going to realize earnings every year. And I don't want to pay taxes on that. So I don't even use a bond index fund. I use a stock index fund only for my standard brokerage account. I'm not realizing any earnings with the stocks because I'm waiting. I only really get those earnings when I sell the stocks, which I'm not doing anytime soon. So in my standard brokerage account, I got a stock index fund and I just keep pumping money into it. And I'm not going to take money out until later, way later. So I'm not really paying any taxes on it. I'm not realizing any earnings. So that's how I would do it. Those two funds, put them into your accounts, but don't put your bond index fund into your standard brokerage account. Only use a stock index for your standard brokerage account. Okay. Now, stocks versus bonds, as far as your investment allocation, here's how I would do it. I use the strategy of minusing my age from 120. And that is the percentage I put in my stock index fund versus my bond index fund. So I'm 30. That means I put 90%. 120 minus 30 is 90. I put 90% of my investments in stock index funds. Some say that this is a bit aggressive, and they say aggressive because stocks are an investment strategy that is a bit aggressive. Stocks in the short term might look a little volatile, but over long-term periods, they have a lot of growth. So the farther you are away from retirement, the more time you have, the more time you can experience that growth. So you're supposed to put more money into it. The closer you get to retirement, the more volatile things will get because you're looking at shorter periods of times. And you're supposed to dial down your stock allocation because you don't want to have that much instability when you're about to retire. So as you get closer to retirement, your stock allocation goes down and your bond allocation goes up. When you're farther from it, your stock allocation should be really high. The 120 methodology is a bit aggressive. I use it because I want to be a bit aggressive. Warren Buffett uses a 90% and 10% strategy, and he's, 60, 70? 90% stocks, 10% bonds is what he does. If you use the strategy of some people saying minus your age from 100, then you're a bit less aggressive. Remember, bonds are going to be stable, but they're not going to really earn much, but they'll be stable and they'll get small earnings. Stocks are going to be higher, but they'll be unstable in the beginning, but longer term, they'll get a lot of growth. I like the 120. I like to be a bit aggressive. If you're feeling a bit nervous about having a lot of money and losing it potentially, which you won't, the market always goes back up. You could look at using the strategy of minusing your age from 100. I minus it from 120, and I'm a bit aggressive. And then, really, guys, when you're investing, you have to think long term. Yeah, like here's an example. I was I forget how much I put down, but I put money that I was going to use for down payment into my standard brokerage account. This is before I knew what the hell I was doing. I put into a standard brokerage account. I knew I was going to need it for down payment within the next 6 months, let's say. 6 to 9, maybe 9 to 12 months. I knew we were going to get a house and I was going to need that money, but I was like, let me just, in the meantime, let it grow. And what ended up happening was COVID hit and the market panicked. And so there's a couple things. When you have money in there only for short-term purposes in your investment accounts, I should have just put it in my cash insured and not even thought about it, but now have short-term money that I need to have in short-term in investment accounts that I know are going to move up and down. Over the long term, they'll move up, but short term, they're going to move up and down. The issue there is that when the market was going down, you have to take money out because you have no idea in the short term whether you're going to gain that back for enough for the down payment for a house. And so you have to take your money out. And you're taking your money out while your money is going down. So you lose on your earnings. But you have to do it because you're panicking in the short term. Just think all long term because that's going to happen. You're going to have those swings in the beginning and in the short term. But you'll find earnings come in the longer term. So you don't want to panic and take your money out when you see a loss, and you don't want to put money in the account, an investment account, when you know you're going to need it for the short term. I put my money in. I have my 6 months expenses stacked up in my cash insured bank, so I know if I need anything, I can pull it from there, and I don't touch my investment accounts. Those are simply the long-term gains. I try not to even look at them often. Every once in a while, I'll just check to see what the number is, but don't really even look at them often. Just let those bad boys grow. Get my mind off of it, because if I see it going down and up, you're going to panic. The market has been going down and up for the last, I don't know how long the stock market has even been a thing, but let's say 100 years. Over 100 years, it's just been going up and down and up and down. But gradually, over the long term, it's always been going up. So don't even look at it. Just don't panic and look at your money. Use and put your money in for later down the road. Let it grow and don't worry about it, and follow the strategy I have. That is, in a nutshell, how I would think about investing your money so you can retire a millionaire. And believe me, you are going to thank your earlier self, because it costs a lot of money to live. I just spoke with someone. When I was growing up, my best friend's father, he is retired now. He is living the goddamn dream. He goes to the beach every day. He's retired in North or South Carolina, and he planned for his retirement smart. And he's enjoying the benefits of it now. It costs money to live. And as you get older, your body's going to start breaking down more and more and more. And there's going to be more health care payments that you're going to need. And you need to have money ready to go. It's not even just for fun. Yeah, have your fun. Make sure you have a few $1 million so when you retire, you have your fun. But it's not just fun. You're going to need money to survive. And so think about that now. You don't want to retire with no money. It is going to be a nightmare situation for you. Save now, retire a millionaire. And in the meantime, that doesn't mean you have to live poor. You don't have to save all the money up now so you spend it on nothing. I'm total advocate for investing in yourself, investing in a business, do all that, but also invest for your retirement. And retire a millionaire, and then be a millionaire now. Invest for yourself, and invest in a business, invest in things that'll make you money now too. I'm not saying not to do that. And if you hear any of my other podcasts, you understand that I say that, because we're all about personal growth here. And I'll wrap it up. So that is investment in a nutshell for how I approach it. If there's any comments or feedback, leave that in the comment section. I love to hear it. I love to see where you think differently and what investment strategies have worked for you. And if you have anything, just put it in the comment section. If you liked what you hear, give me a thumbs up. Also, subscribe so you can hear more content like this. Hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date when I release new videos about once or twice a week. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching.